The road to Hollow Creek farm stand was barely lit that night. A narrow stretch of cracked asphalt cut through the dying woods, the kind where fog always seemed to hang too low, and the trees leaned just a little too close to the edge of the road. Rachel had driven that way 100 times, but never after sunset. It was the night before Halloween, October 30th, and the air was heavy with the smell of rain and burning leaves. Every house in town had some kind of decoration: fake spider webs, flickering jack-o'-lanterns, and rubber bats that swayed in the wind. But Hollow Creek sat at the far edge of town, where the decorations stopped and silence began. She wasn't supposed to be out that late, but work had run long, and she'd promised herself one perfect pumpkin for the front porch. A small normal thing, a piece of warmth before the long winter. The stand sat alone, a small wooden shack with crooked shelves and a flickering string of bulbs stretched across the roof. Pumpkins of all sizes covered the tables in front, some round and perfect, others bruised and strangely pale. The old man behind the counter wore a dark coat buttoned to his throat. His hair was gray and thin, and his eyes had that glassy wetness of someone who hadn't blinked in a while. A metal name tag was pinned to his chest, scratched nearly clean but still readable. Earl. "Evening," Rachel said softly, brushing a lock of hair from her face as she stepped out of her car. The man didn't answer at first. He simply tilted his head, watching her like a curious animal. Finally, he rasped, "Looking for something special or something that lasts?" Rachel smiled uneasily. "Just something nice for the porch, something round, maybe with a long stem." He nodded once and gestured toward the far table. "The good ones are over there, but be careful what you pick." She laughed nervously, thinking it was his way of joking with customers. But as she walked between the rows, she noticed something strange. Each pumpkin was slightly damp, like it had just been washed, or like something inside it was breathing. She crouched near one that seemed perfect, round, smooth, deep orange with a long curling stem. When she lifted it, she froze. The bottom of the pumpkin had a faint, smeared handprint pressed into it. The shape was unmistakable, 5 long fingers, as if someone had gripped it hard from underneath. "That one's taken," the old man's voice came from behind her. Rachel startled, nearly dropping it. "Oh, sorry, I didn't see anyone's name on it." Earl stepped closer, his boots crunching on gravel. He smiled. Or at least, she thought he did. The corners of his mouth didn't move, but his eyes narrowed in what should have been amusement. "Names don't matter much out here. Some things claim what they want." Rachel felt a chill crawl up her back. She set the pumpkin down gently and stepped away, pretending not to notice the way the old man's shadow stretched unnaturally long across the table. "I'll just grab another one," she said lightly. "Plenty to choose from." He didn't reply. When she looked up again, he was gone. Just gone. The lights above her flickered once, twice, then steadied. The entire stand was empty. No wind, no sound, just rows of pumpkins staring back at her like heads waiting to be chosen. She picked another one quickly, small but flawless, and carried it to the counter. No one was there. A small cash jar sat next to a hand-painted sign. "Leave what it's worth." Rachel dropped a $5 bill inside and whispered to herself, "Good enough." The drive home took 10 minutes. The radio wouldn't stop crackling even when she turned it off. Twice she thought she saw movement in the rearview mirror, something standing at the edge of the woods, still and tall. By the time she got home, she was laughing at herself. Just nerves, she told herself. Halloween nerves. She set the pumpkin on the kitchen counter, wiped her hands, and turned off the lights. Outside, the wind howled softly, brushing the trees against her windows. At 3:17 a.m., she woke to the sound of tapping. Soft, rhythmic, deliberate. Like fingernails on glass, she sat up, heart pounding. The sound was coming from the kitchen. Tap, tap, tap. She crept down the stairs barefoot, holding her phone like a weapon. When she reached the kitchen, the sound stopped. The curtains by the window swayed slightly, though the air was still. And then she saw it. The pumpkin was no longer on the counter. It was sitting on the windowsill, facing her. Its surface was darker now, the orange dimmed to something closer to rust. And where that faint handprint had been, there was now a fresh one. Wet, glistening, red. Rachel's breath caught in her throat. The front door creaked, once, then again. She turned toward it, trembling, and saw the frosted outline of someone standing on her porch. A tall shape under the porch light. The bulb flickered once, then went out. A voice, hoarse, dry, and impossibly close, whispered through the glass. "Told you that one's taken." Rachel screamed and backed away. The kitchen lights blinked out all at once, plunging the house into darkness. The only glow came from the pumpkin, its surface now carved from the inside, a grin forming slowly as if being cut by invisible hands. The next morning, the mailman found the door ajar. Rachel's car was still in the driveway. The floor inside was wet, as if rain had blown in, but the sky had been clear all night. And in the center of the kitchen counter sat the pumpkin, its carved smile wide and sharp, a faint name etched beneath the stem. Earl. It was the night before Halloween in Maple Hollow, the kind of small town where people still carved pumpkins by hand and trusted creaky porches to hold their weight. The trees were already bare, the streets lined with rotting leaves that the wind couldn't quite lift away. Amelia had spent the whole week planning her costume. She wasn't the type to care about Halloween, but this year was different. Her friends had talked her into a costume contest at the Hollow's End pub. The prize was nothing special, just a dinner voucher. But for once, she wanted to stand out. She'd searched every store in town, party shops, thrift stores, even the seasonal stalls that sold cheap wigs and plastic masks. Everything looked the same. Plastic, mass-produced, lifeless. On her walk home from work, she passed a narrow alley she'd never noticed before. And there it was. Hendrick's Masquerade. The sign hung crookedly above a single window streaked with dust. Faded masks filled the display. Cracked porcelain faces. Feathered masks from another century. Carnival smiles that never quite reached the eyes. The open sign glowed weakly behind the glass. Curiosity got the better of her. The bell above the door chimed weakly as she stepped inside. The air was cold, colder than outside, and smelled faintly of wax and old cloth. The place was small, lined with wooden shelves that reached the ceiling. Masks hung everywhere, hundreds of them, each with its own expression frozen in time. Behind the counter stood an old man. He was tall but stooped, with gray hair slicked back and skin so pale it almost glowed beneath the flickering bulb above him. His suit looked handmade, decades old but spotless. He greeted her with a slow, deliberate smile. "Looking for something special?" His voice was soft, like paper tearing. Amelia nodded awkwardly. "Just a mask, something different, something real, not plastic." "Ah," the man said, "something that fits." She didn't know what he meant, but he gestured toward the back of the store. The masks there were older, made of leather, porcelain, or materials she couldn't recognize. Some looked handmade, their features uneven, but their eyes looked real. Amelia's fingertips brushed against one that resembled a fox's face. Red paint cracked around the muzzle. Another looked like a crying woman, the tears carved into the material itself. Then at the far end of the shelf she saw it. A mask so simple it almost didn't look like a mask at all. Just a human face. Smooth. Pale. Expressionless. The skin tone was eerily close to her own, and the lips were neutral, neither smiling nor frowning. Something about it felt wrong, but also magnetic. "That one," she whispered. "Can I see it?" The old man appeared beside her without a sound. He reached up with long, bony fingers and lifted it from the hook. The light above them flickered, and for a moment, Amelia could have sworn the mask moved, a tiny twitch, as if adjusting its own expression. "It was made for you," he said softly. She gave a nervous laugh. "Right, it just looks really realistic." "It is," he said. "Real things always fit best." She didn't know what that meant, but when he handed it to her, it felt cold, too cold. The inside was soft, almost like fabric, but not quite. The old man gestured toward a mirror leaning against the wall. "Try it on." Amelia hesitated, but curiosity won. She lifted it to her face and pressed it gently over her features. It fit perfectly. No air gaps, no edges, just seamless skin against skin. It was so light that she could barely feel it. Then she blinked. In the mirror, her reflection blinked too. But the eyes were slightly off. They were darker, deeper. Her expression no longer her own. "It's weirdly comfortable," she said. "Good," he murmured. "That means it's found you." When she tried to remove it, it wouldn't budge. Her fingers slid over the edges, but there were no seams, no place where the mask ended and her face began. "It's stuck," she said, trying to laugh. "What's this made of?" The old man's eyes glimmered. "Memory," he said, "and skin." She froze. "What?" "You chose it," he whispered, "and now it's chosen you." Amelia pulled harder, nails scraping across her cheeks. She felt nothing. No pain, no texture, just smoothness. Panic rose in her throat. "Take it off," she said, "please." "You can't," the old man said gently. "Not until it's finished." The lights flickered again, and the masks on the walls seemed to shift, all of them turning slightly toward her. Dozens of blank faces, each staring. Amelia backed away, trembling.
"What's happening?"
"Every mask needs a wearer," the old man said, "but every face needs a story." Her vision blurred as her skin began to tingle, her lips stiffened. When she tried to scream, it came out muffled, like shouting underwater. She stumbled toward the mirror. The reflection staring back wasn't her anymore. The eyes were wide and glossy. The mouth was smiling, but she wasn't smiling. She clawed at the mask, but her fingers slipped again and again. Her nails bent, cracked. No pain, no blood, only silence. The old man stepped closer, voice low and calm. "Don't fight it. You wanted to be someone else, didn't you, to stand out?" Her breathing quickened, echoing through the mask, hollow, mechanical. She turned toward the door, but the shop was different. The shelves seemed farther apart now, the space longer than before. She ran. The masks watched. Some moved, others whispered. When she reached the exit, she yanked the door open and froze. Outside wasn't the street anymore. It was an empty black space, no buildings, no cars, no sky, just endless nothing. Her scream didn't echo, it vanished. When she opened her eyes, she was standing still. The shop was silent again, the old man was gone, and she couldn't move. She could see everything, the counter, the shelves, the dust motes floating in the cold light, but she couldn't move an inch. She was facing forward, eyes locked. On her face, the mask had hardened, seamless, lifeless. Somewhere behind her, the bell above the door chimed. A voice, a woman's voice, said cheerfully, "Oh, I've never noticed this place before." Then the old man's voice, soft and patient. "Looking for something special?" Amelia wanted to scream, to warn her, to move, but she couldn't. She could only watch as the new customer walked closer to the shelves, and as her reflection in the mirror, the smiling, flawless mask, blinked. Weeks later, when police searched the shop after Amelia's disappearance, they found nothing but dust and silence, except for one display in the window. A single mannequin stood under a flickering bulb, wearing a mask so lifelike that it almost seemed to breathe. And beneath it, on a tiny handwritten tag, were 2 words scrawled in ink that never quite dried. Perfect fit. The text came at 9:47 p.m. Lena almost ignored it. She'd been lying on her bed in her parents' house, scrolling mindlessly through her phone, half listening to the sound of the old clock ticking in the hallway. It had been 6 months since she moved back to Everwood Hollow, and every night felt the same. Slow, empty, and too quiet for comfort. The message buzzed again. Halloween party, tonight. The old Everwood house. Costumes required. Midnight start. Come alone. She frowned, reading it twice. The number wasn't saved in her phone. There was no name, no emoji signature, just the message. Her first thought was that it was a prank. Her second thought was that it might actually be fun. Everwood Hollow didn't have much going on anymore. The old cinema had shut down, the diner closed early, and the only bar in town was more of a retirement lounge. Halloween used to be special here. As a kid, she remembered the parades, the trick-or-treating, and the Everwood house legend whispered by kids at school. The house, perched on the hill at the far edge of town, had been abandoned for decades. Its owner, a man named Silas Everwood, was said to have vanished during a Halloween party in 1938. They found the lights still burning, food untouched, and music still playing on the gramophone. But everyone inside was gone. Every local had a version of the story. No one ever agreed on what really happened. Lena set her phone down, staring at the message. Maybe some teenagers were reviving the old story for fun, or maybe it was just a harmless gathering in a creepy place. Her parents were asleep. The night outside was still, and she could feel that same pull, the curiosity that always got her into trouble. By 11 p.m., she was standing in front of her mirror, tying her hair beneath a black witch's hat. She'd chosen a simple black dress, pale makeup, and a faint red lipstick that caught the glow of her nightlight. She looked at herself like she was someone else for a night. Someone who wasn't bored or lonely or restless. She grabbed her car keys and left. The road to the Everwood house was worse than she remembered. Narrow, cracked, lined with skeletal trees that seemed to lean inward. Fog hung low across the ground, thick enough to blur the fields into endless gray. Halfway there, her radio began to cut out, faint static interrupting the music, then strange, short bursts of whispering. She turned it off. When she reached the hill, her breath caught. There were cars. A dozen, maybe more, lined along the road, their windows fogged, their interiors dark. She could faintly hear music drifting through the fog, soft, tinny, old-fashioned, not pop, not techno. Something older, something that didn't belong in 2025, a slow waltz maybe. Something from another century. She parked and got out. The air was sharp with cold, and the sound of the windmill creaking in the distance echoed like a groan. The house loomed ahead, 3 stories tall, its windows flickering with candlelight. The once white wood was gray and peeling, vines crawling up the porch. But through the open front door, she saw movement, silhouettes of people dancing. Her heartbeat quickened. It looked like a party. She walked up the gravel path, her boots crunching softly. Someone inside laughed, a deep, elegant laugh that sounded rehearsed. Lena hesitated at the door, peeking in. The air was thick with the scent of melted wax and dust. Every table was covered with candles, hundreds of them, dripping wax down onto yellowed lace tablecloths. Dozens of people danced in the center of the room, their faces hidden behind masks, some elaborate, others plain. Every man wore a suit or tuxedo, every woman a gown. And the strangest thing, they were all dancing to music that came from a phonograph in the corner. A record spun slowly, the needle crackling with age. "Welcome," a voice said. Lena jumped slightly. A tall man stood beside her, dressed in a black tuxedo and a white porcelain mask. "You're just in time," he said, his tone smooth but distant. "For what?" she asked. "The final dance." He extended his hand. Lena hesitated, then smiled awkwardly. "This is a really elaborate party. Who organized it?" "We all did," he said, "every year." He took her hand before she could protest and led her toward the crowd. His fingers were freezing, colder than the night outside. They stepped onto the floor, joining the slow waltz. The other dancers moved with haunting precision, each step perfectly in rhythm. No one spoke. No one laughed. Only the scratch of the record and the faint whisper of feet on wood. After a minute, Lena began to feel lightheaded, like the room was spinning too fast. She tried to laugh it off. "You guys are really committed. What is this? Some sort of historical reenactment?" The man tilted his head slightly. Her scream echoed across the empty hill. The way he said it made her skin crawl. As they turned, she caught glimpses of faces, masks that seemed to be carved from porcelain, but some had hairline cracks that revealed pale gray skin underneath. Their movements were too smooth. Their eyes behind the masks didn't blink. She glanced toward the window, but outside it was pitch black. No moon, no fog, no light at all. "How long have you all been doing this?" she asked. "Since the first guests came," the man replied. "We didn't mean to keep them, but once you're part of the dance, you can't leave." Lena froze. "What?" He smiled faintly behind his mask. "It's the rule." The record skipped once, then again, and when it did, every dancer stopped moving. Every head turned toward her, perfectly synchronized. The candles flickered, stretching shadows high up the walls. "I think I should go," she whispered. The man released her hand slowly. "You can try." She stumbled backward. The dancers began moving again, but this time without music, their heads lolling, their limbs bending wrong. Their masks cracked open wider as if their faces were splitting. The floorboards beneath her groaned, pulsing faintly under her feet. Lena ran to the door. It slammed shut on its own. The handle burned cold under her hand. She pulled. It didn't move. Behind her, the man's voice echoed. "Midnight guests never leave before dawn." She turned and saw them closing in, all of them, circling slowly, whispering things she couldn't understand. The record began to play again, but backward now. The melody distorted into something that sounded like breathing. A woman's voice, faint and cracked, sang from the phonograph. "Round and round the guests shall stay, till the dawn burns night away." Lena screamed. She grabbed a candle, flung it toward the curtains. The flames caught immediately, racing up the wall. But instead of spreading, they turned blue and sank back into the wood, as if the house itself swallowed them. The man reached for her. His mask slipped off and revealing a face half-rotted, eyes white and sunken. "Dance with us," he rasped. She bolted toward the staircase and ran. The steps shook beneath her. Every door she opened revealed another version of the ballroom. Same people, same song, looping endlessly. Finally, she crashed into a small upstairs room. A child's room, untouched by time. A dusty mirror stood in the corner. In it, she saw herself, breathing heavily, pale, shaking. But in the reflection, the door behind her was open, and dozens of masked figures stood in the mirror, even though the room behind her was empty. One of them whispered, "You already joined us." Lena woke up lying on the wooden floor, sunlight spilling through the cracks. The house was silent, empty. No candles, no music, no people. Her car was still outside, the only one there. She stumbled toward the door, breathing hard. On the wall beside it, something had been freshly carved, hundreds of names. At the bottom, Lena Marie Carter 2025. And beneath it, midnight guests never leave. Her scream echoed across the empty hill. That evening, police arrived after reports of strange lights and music in the abandoned Everwood house. They found no one inside, only an old phonograph spinning silently in the middle of the floor. The record was blank, but when an officer leaned in close, he swore he heard a woman's voice whisper, "It's your turn to dance." They all laughed it off. But the next night, the lights came on again. And from the road, if you listen closely, you can still hear faint music drifting through the wind. A slow, haunting waltz that stops abruptly at dawn. There's something about small towns on Halloween night, that perfect mix of excitement and silence. When the sun goes down and the wind picks up, even the friendliest streets start to feel wrong. Too many shadows, too many old stories that people pretend to forget. For Mark and Dana Holloway, Halloween had always been a quiet thing. They'd moved to Pine Grove 3 years ago, trying to escape the chaos of the city. They bought a little white house at the end of Ash Pine Lane, surrounded by woods that always looked a little too dark at night. This year, they decided not to go out. Dana had filled a big ceramic bowl with candy, chocolates, gummies, the works, and set it out on the porch with a little handwritten sign. "Take one, please. Happy Halloween." It was the kind of thing they'd always done. But this time, she also set up their new doorbell camera, curious to see which kids would come by. They went inside, turned off the porch light after a while, and settled in for a quiet night. At 8:46 p.m., the first notification came through on Mark's phone. The camera had detected motion. He smiled, opened the app, and saw a kid in a dark costume standing at the porch steps. The costume was strange, a black robe with a pumpkin mask that didn't quite fit, too big for their head. The child stood completely still for almost 30 seconds, not moving. Then, slowly, it raised its hand and waved at the camera. Dana laughed when he showed her. "Creepy little guy," she said. "They're probably daring each other to stay still." The child took a single piece of candy and walked off. A few minutes later, another notification. Same figure, same costume, standing perfectly still. Mark frowned. Maybe they came back for seconds? This time, the kid didn't move for over a minute. Then, as the motion light flicked on, the figure turned its head slightly, just enough for the camera to catch the mask's cracked surface. The mouth of the pumpkin looked hand-carved, uneven, with jagged edges that seemed to go too deep. Then it walked away again, disappearing into the dark. By 10 p.m., most of the neighborhood lights were off. The candy bowl was nearly empty. Dana yawned, got up, and checked through the blinds. The street was deserted, just the faint orange glow of the lamppost and the sound of dry leaves moving in the wind. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't the cheerful ding-dong they were used to. It was a long, single chime that seemed to stretch, echoing longer than it should have. Mark checked the live feed again. The same child stood there, pumpkin mask tilted to one side, one hand resting on the candy bowl. "Persistent little thing," Dana muttered. But when she looked closer, her smile faded. The candy bowl was gone. The kid wasn't holding it. It just wasn't there. Mark stepped toward the door, but Dana grabbed his arm. "Wait, maybe it's just a prank. Don't open it." The motion alert went off again. The camera caught the figure turning toward the window, lifting its hand and pointing directly at the lens. The feed glitched. The video froze, pixelated, then went black. They tried resetting the app, the Wi-Fi, everything. Nothing worked. Around midnight, Dana went to the kitchen for water. As she passed the front door, she thought she heard something. A faint clinking, like glass tapping against the wood. She looked through the peephole. Nothing. When she turned away, the doorbell rang again, this time 3 slow chimes. Mark ran from the living room, grabbed the flashlight, and opened the door. The porch was empty. The air was freezing, but sitting neatly in the middle of the doormat was the candy bowl, perfectly full again. Every piece of candy wrapped, untouched. "Maybe some kid dropped it back off," Dana said weakly. Mark crouched down to look. The candies were perfectly arranged in a spiral pattern, and in the center sat something new. A single old-fashioned candy wrapped in faded orange paper tied with string. No brand name, just there. He picked it up, unwrapped it, and frowned. Inside wasn't candy. It was a small piece of folded paper. 4 words were written in messy, childish handwriting. "I'm still outside." The porch light flickered. Dana slammed the door shut, locked it twice, and backed away. "It's a joke," Mark said, "some stupid prank." But neither of them could explain how the bowl got refilled. They went upstairs, turned off the lights, and tried to sleep. The woods outside creaked in the wind. At 2:17 a.m., the motion sensor pinged again. The doorbell didn't ring this time, it whispered. A soft, static-filled voice came through the speaker. "Trick or treat." Dana shot upright. Mark grabbed his phone, shaking hands trying to open the app. The live feed came on. The pumpkin-masked figure was back, closer than before. Standing right up against the door, one hand pressed to the wood. The other hand was holding something long and thin. A stick. No, a finger. He zoomed in. The mask's mouth was wider now, torn at the edges like it had been ripped open. Inside, something moved. Then the figure tilted its head again and whispered through the camera mic. "You didn't say thank you." The feed went static again, then flatlined. When police arrived the next morning, the Holloways were gone. The front door was still locked from the inside. The only thing they found on the porch was the candy bowl, filled again, this time with wrappers made of brown paper, each one tied with the same faded orange string. Each piece contained a note, all handwritten in the same shaky lettering. Every note said the same thing: "Trick or treat." Neighbors reported hearing the doorbell ringing again the next night, long, slow metallic chimes echoing down Ashpine Lane. But when anyone tried to check, there was no one there. Just a candy bowl sitting on the porch of an empty house waiting. And sometimes late at night, if you drive by and roll your window down, you can hear a child's voice whisper softly from the dark. One piece only. There was always something off about the little antique shop on Maple Street. It wasn't the dusty windows or the way the lights flickered at night. It was the feeling you got when you walked by. Like something behind the glass was watching. Lila worked 2 doors down at a cafe. Every morning she saw the old shopkeeper sweeping the sidewalk, wearing his usual faded brown vest and cracked glasses. He never looked up, never spoke, just kept sweeping like he was afraid to stop. One night, near the end of October, the power went out in half the block. The cafe closed early and Lila decided to take a shortcut home past the antique shop. The lights inside were still on. She paused. The closed sign hung crookedly, but the front door was slightly open, just enough for the bell to jingle faintly in the cold wind. And through the dusty glass, she saw movement. Curiosity got the better of her. She pushed the door open. The smell hit her first. Old paper, burnt wax, and something faintly metallic. Rows of shelves stretched across the narrow room, stacked with clocks, dolls, glassware, and porcelain masks. They were everywhere, faces frozen in different expressions, staring blankly through cracks and dust. "Hello?" she called out softly. "You left your door open." No answer, but somewhere deeper in the shop, a floorboard creaked. She took a few steps forward, her phone light cutting through the shadows. Dust hung in the air like fog. The temperature dropped as she passed a tall glass cabinet filled entirely with masks, dozens of them. They all had different faces: joy, sadness, anger, horror. But one caught her eye. It was the only one smiling. The smile wasn't cartoonish or exaggerated. It was human, gentle, real. So real, in fact, that she stepped closer just to make sure it was a mask. The tag beneath it read, "The Mirror Smile, $13. Something about it unsettled her. The skin tone matched hers almost exactly, and the eyes, though blank, seemed faintly wet. "Creepy," she whispered. As she turned to leave, the shopkeeper's voice came from the shadows. "It likes you." She spun around. He was standing behind the counter, half in darkness, his face pale and tired. "Sorry, I didn't mean to—" "You saw it," he interrupted quietly. "Most people walk past, but you looked." Lila tried to laugh it off. "It's just realistic. You make them yourself?" He shook his head slowly. "They make themselves." Her skin prickled. "Okay, I think I'll just go." "If you wear it," he said, his voice low and strained, "don't smile back." That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. She told herself it was just another weird small-town encounter. But when she got home and looked in the mirror, she thought she saw something behind her. A faint reflection, a curved grin that didn't belong to her. The next day, she went back. The door was open again, but this time the shopkeeper was gone. The mask was still there, but the price tag was missing. She stared at it for a long time. The smile seemed softer now, inviting. Almost kind. Before she could stop herself, she lifted the glass case. The air inside was ice cold. She picked up the mask. It felt strange, soft, like warm skin stretched thin. When she turned it over, the inside wasn't smooth. It looked almost organic, with faint ridges where cheekbones should be. She should have put it down. She should have walked away. But she didn't. The moment it touched her face, the world went silent. It fit perfectly, too perfectly. Her breath echoed inside it. Her voice didn't sound like her own anymore. "It's fine," she whispered. "Just a mask." When she looked in the mirror, the mask's expression moved. The lips parted, then curled upward in a smile. She froze. Her hands reached up to pull it off, but the edges had fused to her skin. Her reflection smiled wider. "Don't smile back," the shopkeeper's voice echoed in her mind. But it was too late. She smiled. Reflexively. The mask's grin widened, stretching impossibly far, splitting the cheeks into sharp red lines. Her eyes burned, the edges of her vision darkening as if the reflection itself was sucking her in. She stumbled backward, knocking over a shelf. Glass shattered around her. When she turned again, the mirror wasn't showing her anymore. It showed the shop, empty, and a single mask hanging where she stood. The next morning, the cafe owner found the shop door wide open. The place was silent except for the ticking of dozens of clocks. Behind the counter where the smiling mask once hung, there was a new one. Identical, except now the grin was a little different. Wider, sharper, and if you looked closely enough at the eyes, you could see a faint reflection. A woman trapped inside, mouth open in a scream that never made a sound. That night, as the town's Halloween parade passed through Maple Street, people swore they saw a woman in the crowd wearing a porcelain mask that smiled on its own. When they looked again, she was gone. But her reflection, just for a second, lingered in the shop window, smiling back. You've just crossed the boundary between reality and the unknown. If you felt the fear tonight, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because on this channel, every story is just the beginning. New nightmares arrive every few nights, each one darker than the last. Until then, keep your lights low, your doors locked, and your mind open. You are now part of the FearBound family.